Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining another episode of the Product Management Learning Series, a series of live streaming events where industry thought leaders and practitioners share their PM career journeys, as well as product building lessons along the way to inspire aspiring and current product builders like you to level up your product journey. My name is Shivi. I am the host for the show, as well as a product lead at LinkedIn. Please drop in the chat where you're joining us from. We are starting a very special series featuring product builders from leading generative AI companies and thought leaders in the space. Please join us as we explore the challenges and opportunities of this very transformative technology paradigm shift and gain insights from those leading the charge in the generative AI development space. So please make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, which you can find a link in the event's details page or directly from my profile to receive recaps of our conversation from today's event, as well as future event updates. So today with me, I have a very, very special guest. Let me bring him up to stream. Hi, Sami.
Hi, Shivi.
Thanks for joining us. So Sami co-founds and leads the engineering team for Forethought. Including machine learning research and engineering, is the next generation customer service, generative AI platform. Really excited to have you here today, Sami. Can't wait to dive in and talk more. Before we talk about Forethought, just a little bit about your resume or your LinkedIn profile. Sami used to work on the AI and ML team at LinkedIn. So it's really honored to have you here as a LinkedIn alumni, improving the relevance of the newsfeed. You were named to Forbes 30 under 30, very high accomplishment, originally from Lebanon. You came over to the U.S. to complete your undergrad and graduate studies at Harvard. So folks, please say hi, because we might have someone from Lebanon. That's usually what happened on our show. So really excited. But you have been living in the Bay Area for how many years now?
7.
Nice. That's actually roughly how long I have been in the Bay Area as well.
Great.
But yeah, without further ado, really excited to have you. Actually, in the LinkedIn fashion, I just introduced kind of what's on your LinkedIn profile. What is one fun fact that's not on your LinkedIn profile that you like to share with the audience?
Oh, I remember those. Those were fun. Fun fact. I like what do you call board sports? So snowboarding, surfing. Recently tried kite surfing. Those are really fun. People don't really think of that when they look at me, glasses and all. But I guess that.
That's awesome. That's really great. Cool. So let's get started. Let's start with, travel back the memory lane, some original story. What was the kind of the founding story behind Forethought? Like, where does the initial inspiration came from? And why focus on customer service automation?
Yeah, awesome. It wasn't truthfully the most romantic founding story. So the co-founders are myself and my friend Dion, who's the CEO. Dion and I had met about 10 years ago when we were interns at Palantir and just became really good friends. We bonded over a bunch of things, including coding. Late at night, we lived in the same intern compound and playing basketball and such. We kept in touch. After graduation, I worked at LinkedIn, as you mentioned. We were both heavily plugged into the research that was happening in NLP. At the time, it wasn't called generative AI. But really around 2017, if you were in that space, you started seeing all the potential from things like attention that had become mainstream. And so Dion had actually had a stint while he was in high school working in customer service. For me, I was just very passionate about the technology. We were thinking about this definitely is going to get applied in the business world. There's so much data there. Mostly it's text data. It's super valuable. There's orders of magnitude more text data available within companies than what's available publicly on the internet. And so from my point of view, it was, where's the right place to start? Because we were thinking about building more of a intelligence layer for the enterprise. something that had happened by that point, we're talking 2017, 2018, you had started to have all these standardized platforms for basically every department in an enterprise. So like Salesforce for sales, HubSpot for marketing, Zendesk for support, Workday for HR, on and on. And we were thinking the next big change is going to be having an AI layer on top. And we hope that we can be that AI layer. Maybe in the future, things are even AI first, and that AI layer just becomes synonymous with the whole system of record, system of engagement. So it was a little bit like that. We kind of rationalized, we want to build this, want to be part of this AI wave that's coming. It was clearly coming. You could tell back in 2017, 2018. And so Dion having kind of a natural proclivity for customer service is why we started there.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. I think it has like a good sort of, they call it founder market fit, right? Like you have some experience in AI and machine learning, and he has experience, in customer service. Well, why don't we bring it live, Sami? Let's take a look at how the
Yeah.
product looks like. Maybe you can walk through, do a quick demo for the audience, bring the magic live, and then we'll dive into
All
some
right.
of the more specifics. Yeah.
Let's do that. Okay. Um, okay, so a couple of things to show here. Let me see, share my screen. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So a couple of things to say here. This is the admin view of our product. So this is what the person rolling out Forethought to their customers would be seeing. And you'll notice we have a few products shown here. Forethought is an AI suite that contains 4 products in it. I'll talk about them maybe in a little more detail, during this conversation. But basically, we try to solve every problem in the customer support journey. So a customer may reach out to support when they have an issue. We have a product called Solve that attempts to automate the resolution. If that happens, great, everybody wins. If not, we'll create a ticket in the CRM. At that point, we have another product called Triage that automates routing and tagging, prioritizing tickets, sending them to the right person at the right time. And then we have an agent augmentation product called Assist. So I'll show all these things really quickly, maybe focusing a little more on Solve, which is kind of what you think of when the first time you say AI for customer support is really chatbots and bots that automate responses. So what you're seeing here is we're inside of a workflow. So we split up the world of support inquiries into these different intents that customers might have. And for each one, we have a workflow that solves it. The innovation here is that this is a workflow that you're seeing. Normally, what workflows look like is a rigid step-by-step tree. So if I show you what that looks like here, sorry, off-the-cuff demo.
No worries. This is keeping it real, keeping it live. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
our audience will enjoy.
So we're inside of Zendesk here, so this is not Forethought. But this is, Zendesk is a great company. This is pretty typical of regular bot building software here, where you start off from scratch and you need to create these workflows from scratch. So this one's called order status. You need to train the AI to know when to recognize this. And this is a pretty simple workflow here that checks the order status in your system and then handles the different cases. Even for this, you end up with about 25 steps, and it takes quite a while
Wow.
to build this. So by contrast, what you have here is there's this whole natural language policy that was actually created for you. And I can show you how in a second, but even if it's not created for you, you can create it from scratch. And you're just expressing yourself in natural language. So check the status of the order based on the order ID. and report back to the customer, let's say. And let's say if you can't find the order ID, apologize and create a ticket in the help desk. So that's literally what you might be doing as an admin. And then you need to give it access to these API calls or actions that the policy is referring to. So check order status, create ticket in help desk. And from this point, before you publish it to your customers, you can preview what this would look like. So we're still in the solve world here. How can I help you today? I haven't received my order. It's been over 7 days. What's going on? So this is a customer that's unhappy. And so the bot is going to follow the instructions here. So may I have your order ID, please? Let's just say I need a second to go pull it up. This is the kind of thing that there's no way that a traditional bot could handle, or like the admin needs to have thought of every possible way the conversation can go. So, okay, I'll give it some order ID. This one actually doesn't exist in the system. The bot will look for it. So it called this check order status. It didn't find it. The policy says apologize and create a ticket in the help desk. So please provide me your name and email address. So from here, okay, I've given it to you. So the bot is carrying on, and it's going to create it for me. So this is all, pretty innovative, and it gets a little more fun in a second. But this is the gist of it. So we've created the ticket here. That's kind of the solve piece of things. We support, omni-channel, WhatsApp, email, whatever. And then from here, just to look at a ticket where it hasn't been resolved, a support agent is going to respond to it. What you see here on the left-hand side is tags and field values that our triage product has automatically tagged on the ticket when it came in. And then we have an augmentation product I mentioned, which is Assist, which looks like this browser extension here. It can also generate responses for you based on the information that's contained there. That's a little bit about that. The last part I think is worth talking about here is our Discover product. And this ties everything back together, and this is really at the root of our differentiation. We uncover the taxonomy that the company has. And so we're grouping together things that we think belong to, together, even though they might be worded in very different ways. And the benefit of this is it's obviously great for analytics, but also it's a shortcut to automation. And so when you automate something from here, you don't need to teach the bot what this issue is about. There's hundreds and thousands of examples that are based on your data. And along with this, that natural language policy that I showed you that I was creating from scratch actually gets created for you, because we've seen how agents have responded to things in the past, and we can infer what that policy should be. So that's really the holy grail for us, is that you start from connecting your help desk or CRM. There's all these other integrations that we support. And immediately we'll start to ingest the data. We redact it, we store it, we train dedicated models for each company. It automatically gets deployed, and everything is ready. Here's your 150 automation workflows. We've generated them for you. Let's go, type of thing. So that's the product. Sorry if I went a bit too long.
No, this is really helpful. Thank you so much. Thanks for bringing the magic live. Let's backtrack a little bit and dive deeper into some of these. And then since, today's audience, a lot of them are probably interested in the product aspect, right? Like how you build it, what decisions you make, and a little bit of the technology aspect as well. So let's start with, is Solve the first product you developed?
No, it's not actually. We started off with Assist, the agent augmentation side of things.
Interesting. So what were some of how did you find out about which was the first product to develop, back in the days, and how did it evolve? What were some of the key decisions and learnings along those early days?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know that we did it the best way. We probably didn't, but we started off having two ideas, kind of two realizations. Um, People at the time were pretty skeptical about AI, and so it was hard to say, that chatbots have sucked historically. Let me tell you why mine is amazing, and you should put this in front of all your customers and trust it. It was an easier sell to say, let's put this behind the firewall. This is going to help your agents, especially the new ones who are onboarding and training. Um, and once you see that that's going well, uh, we'll have been on our way to building an automation product, and then we can take that same technology but put it more customer facing. That's a little bit how that happened. Also, we were pretty excited about the prospect of helping support reps in their job. It can be a tedious job, so any kind of positive energy we could bring to their day is helpful. And once you see these wow moments, aha moments, that's kind of what we lived for early days. So eventually the market just kept pulling us more and more into straight up automation, especially actually when COVID hit. And so that was a big shift for us.
Yeah, for sure. I love the how you started with more like humans in the loop kind of approach to amplify the agents versus trying to replace them.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk a little bit more about the tech itself and also the market adoption in the early days, right? As you alluded to back in the days, or even over the years, even nowadays, I feel like people until ChatGPT, that sort of bring AI a face, like a friendly
Yeah.
face. I think a lot of people are kind of thinking like AI is super powerful, but then it also hallucinates a ton. Like it creates all those weird things. It's like automation. It's like not really that smart. So how did you, in the early days, at least, how how did you make sure the quality of some of those automation? And then we'll talk about LLM and the tech stack in a little bit. But just
Yeah.
how do you get people over the hump? Like crossing the chasm, right? Like they had to be maybe the early adopters who are willing to try, but how do you guarantee how do you control the quality when things are so unpredictable and AI is this black box? How do you
Yeah.
give out more control in this automated process?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's reality and then there's perception. Um, the reality is that yes, those models would hallucinate, especially once maybe GPT-2 came out. That became um, actually you could start to think about it as a viable option, maybe more so in marketing, generating collateral and such. Um, that would hallucinate. But what we were doing was more taking models um, like that and Flan from Google, and fine tuning them per company on very specific data sets for very specific tasks. So it wasn't a large language model. Certainly by today's standards of hundreds of billions of parameters, it was more like hundreds of millions that you fine tune on like 100,000 plus data point data points to do one specific thing, like categorize this thing into these buckets, or the agent has started typing their answer, completed based on what you've seen just from data from this company. And so it didn't really hallucinate. That wasn't an issue, but the perception uh, was still there that, oh, I can't trust this either because I don't think it's performant, or I don't know what it's going to spit out. And so that was a real problem. So it's kind of like you mentioned, in general, whether you were doing generative or not, um, we started off with really forward-thinking tech companies who were more willing to embrace the new wave of technology, and um, the whole crossing the chasm, kind of that S curve. I think we were in the early adopters phase. ChatGPT really changed things, where I guess you could call it early majority now. And that's been, we're very lucky. That's been a huge benefit to us.
Yeah. Before we dive into talking about some of the market growth, which I think a lot of folks are very interested to hear as well, just on the tech side, you mentioned about using a base model. So it's an open source model,
Mhm.
and then you would fine tune it per customer to ensure because you're serving enterprise graded
Mhm.
customers, right? One of
Mhm.
the questions I heard folks discussing a lot, and for folks working in generative AI product, it's let's say if the base model is being upgraded, or some folks calling the API to GPT, right?
Mhm.
It went from GPT 3 to GPT 3.5, and then now 4, and then there's rumors of 5 coming. So if the base model keep upgrading, do you have to retune some of this model? Like, how do you think about the tech stack involving in this like rapid growth
Yeah.
generative AI space?
Yeah. So we hosted all of our own models. More recently, there are certain tasks where we'll use an open AI because it's faster experimentation for us. But generally, we'll experiment with it, and then when something works, we want to fine tune our own lower latency, cheaper, better model and host it ourselves. Um, Even then, you may have a better version of a transformer model that comes out. Uh, in reality, we've upgraded the models that we've used, just throughout the years. Um, the nice part is we're always collecting new data sets, and we still have the old data sets that the original models were trained on. So it's more of an exercise in data pipelines and data infrastructure and ML infrastructure, and that's something we've gotten really good at over the years. Um, so we want to also ensure no model degradation. So you need evaluation data, which is a whole thing that's very crucial, and kind of the starting point for everything else. But yeah, you don't have to upgrade, but if you're customer obsessed and you want to give them a better experience in practice, you do, but you try to make sure you don't have to redo all the work from scratch and that you're not making things worse for customers.
Yeah, I was willing to move on to the next one, but you just brought up something really important, the evaluation framework.
Mhm.
To the extent you could share, can you give like a little bit of like best practices there? Do you do it by customer every time you upgrade a model? How to do it, how to think about it? Yeah.
Yeah. A lot to say on that topic. When we're implementing a new task or a new feature, on the ML side, it's often the first thing we talk about is how is success defined and what's the evaluation data, so that we don't just keep eyeballing things and saying, oh, maybe this looks better or not. So it has to be very quantifiable. Um, there are some tasks where the um, evaluation data can be um, kind of generated organically. So like if we're looking at how an agent answered and we're trying to generate something and we're looking at the overlap there, okay, we have our evaluation data. It's whatever the agent said. Um, for other cases, we're generating something totally new, and we need to know how good that is. Often we use manual labelers. So we have a company that has contractors that helps us do this. So in part for this exercise and other things, from early on, we had to um, redact our data from sensitive PII information, things like that. So we use models that we host, but we have them from a company called Private AI. So privacy is a huge thing when you're um, trying to look at customer data. Um, and so there's some manual labeling. Increasingly now, there's also some labeling that's automated through a GPT-4, for example. Um, so we do all these things. We don't do it per company. It's more we pool together a bunch of data, and then that's the data that we have for this task. We can keep iterating on our solution or our algorithm. Um, and if it's working for everyone in our data set, then we assume it's going to work for everybody else moving forward. And there's no like, we onboard a new company, let's go manually label for them. We don't do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's transition to talk a little bit about growth and scaling. You mentioned earlier in the early days, it's mostly early adopters, and now it's probably evolving a little bit to early majority thanks to ChatGPT. But how did you and Teen approach, acquiring customer and making sure that they are set up for success? Um, since this is more like an enterprise B2B selling play, do you use any product-led growth technology, like strategies? What's the learning there, and how did
Yeah.
you get traction in people trying, building pilots, and extending? Yeah.
Yeah. Early days, it was all founder led. We had some great angel investors and investors that we brought on who were very helpful in introducing us to people in their network, Rolodex, and some of them were more kind of forward thinking, willing to trust a tiny startup. Um, and that's how we started. It's just been fascinating in all aspects of a startup. Momentum is a very real thing. It's hard to get the first few, but once you do, it's a flywheel. Then you get case studies, then it's easier to get the next one, then it's easier to hire great engineers, then it's easier to fundraise and hire and build a better product and get more customers. So yeah, early on, it's just introductions and kind of we tried cold calling, cold emailing. That worked out well. Over time, when we wanted to scale things up a little more, we looked at how much runway we had, and we thought, we'd heard some horror stories about people trying to use marketing, for inbound, and there's some great success stories, and there's also some failures where you spend a lot of money and it just doesn't work, and now you have nothing to show for it. So we sort of went the more conservative route of if we go with SDRs or sales development reps who make these cold emails, cold calls, and they make a lot of them every day. That there's some industry benchmarks of how often you'll get a response, how often things will close, and so that seemed like a more guaranteed way of we put in this much input, we're going to get at least this much out of it, and that'll be enough for us to go raise another round. And so that is how it worked out for us. Once we had raised more money, we started thinking, okay, we can afford to risk things on marketing now, and let's hope for the best. And it did take us a while to figure that out, but that channel is now huge. So we get a lot more inbound than outbound these days, especially after ChatGPT. And we're trying to make everything fully self-service where customers will sign up, but our ideal customer profile tends to be kind of mid-market to enterprise. And so there is a sales process involved typically. That doesn't mean you don't try to make the product as self-service as possible. You do, but I think we still walk you through a whole sales process.
Right. And then how soon would you say, from someone who's like interested to sign up and try out the product to actually be able to stand up like an instance for them to start integrating? I would assume the buyer who comes to the site are the admin that you talked about earlier to kind of like play with it. Is that how it usually works?
The buyer can be an admin. Typically at maybe bigger companies, it's a VP of customer success or of operations or COO or such, director of customer success. The product is up and running like immediately. You can start connecting to your help desk if you want. You can start generating these workflows from scratch if you want. The discover piece takes us a few hours. It's bottlenecked by how fast can we ingest all of your data, process it, train models on it, deploy it. It's all automated, so it happens within a day. But yeah, next day you come in, everything is ready. With that said, we walk you through an implementation process. We need to teach you how our product works, all of that. So you get a dedicated customer success manager, all that. And there's an implementation process, but it's usually more for teaching the users about the product and kind of gaining their trust that it's okay, you can roll this out this way, you can put it in front of your customers gradually, type of thing.
Yeah. And then are you right now doing it as like a free trial for people to test a pilot, or you are charging? What is the pricing mechanism and the thought behind some of that business model?
Yeah, we do free trials. And the pricing depends on the product. I mentioned we have those four. Um, Agent augmentation is based on number of seats. Everything else is based on volume. So how many conversations do you have with your customers? How many are we going to be automating for you? Just based on that. And if you'd like to try the product before you buy, we support that.
Yeah, that's great. And then earlier, when you said inbound marketing, what are some of the marketing tactics that you've been using? Is it mostly pay ads, or are you writing thought leadership pieces around customer service? What have been working
Yeah.
well for thought?
All of the above. I think we get more from organic searches and people coming on our website and requesting demos and that kind of thing. But yeah, paid for sure. I'm really not the expert on our side on exactly the conversion rates from each one, but I've been told you need a balanced strategy and try to like hit everything. So we definitely do that.
Yeah. So the next question I wanted to ask is that since ChatGPT, I think there has been just like a proliferation of all type of Gen AI companies, including in the chatbot space for customer service, right? So how do you? I think during your demo you mentioned a little bit about some of the integration, the integrations that you're building to help differentiate. But what else are you thinking to kind of, I guess the common VC term is building moats to
Yeah.
both differentiate and defend your business. So, what
Yeah.
are some of your thinking there?
Setting aside the word moat for a second, the differentiation comes from two things. One is we just offer more products and they're all complementary, so it's part of a all-encompassing AI suite. Whereas typically, what you see out there is just a chatbot. That's one thing that's helped us win over time. The other, for me, more exciting thing is this aspect of being rooted in your data. Typically, chatbots out there and other solutions like that will say, here's a blank canvas. Let's start from scratch. Tell me what kinds of issues your customers are facing and tell me how I should recognize them. Then tell me what I should do about them. And instead of that, we connect to your help desk, we ingest all the data, and we make something out of it, which is all these automated workflows that already have been generated for you that frame the problem in a way that will lead to a much better end customer experience. Typically, the admins may not, it's not their job to know how to design conversations, or they're not typically the ones solving the issues either. So often what you see when you let admins start from scratch is that they'll create a few massive monolithic workflows. Here's 7 buttons. Which one's your issue? Okay, here's 5 more buttons, etc. So all that to say, when it's rooted in your data, it's much less work for the admin. It's also a much better experience for the end customer. And it involves knowing how to leverage all that kind of treasure of data that's there that so far no one seems to really have figured out what to do with it.
So data is really kind of the core and the secret sauce to make some of these, experience more differentiated and unique and value add. I do wanted to sort of ask a $1 million question, speaking to the elephant in the room, right? I think a lot of us, you look at news reports, like people are worried about losing jobs because of AI automation. And sometimes you are probably dealing with the buyers who wanted to save costs as one of the attractive value driver for them to invest in a solution like this. And then at the same time, there's people on the other side, right? They're being the recipient or being impacted by this technology. I know you mentioned early days, you kind of keeping the human in the loop, but as you thinking about, seeing the space evolve, like what are some of the top ethical concerns related to AI automation in the customer service space? and then how are you sort of proactively addressing it as kind
Yeah.
of being the category leader in this space, right?
Awesome. So
With great power comes great responsibility. That's all
no,
I want to say.
and honestly, it's something that we early days kind of struggled with, and we went more in the direction of automation over time because that's where the market was pulling us. Even though Dion, for example, um, hesitated a little bit, but in our DNA, and I think this has worked out well over decades with some of the most successful companies. We have to be customer obsessed. What does the customer want? And our customer is um, the companies that buy our software, and their customers are their customers that are interacting with them through us. They all want um, an experience that's fast, accurate, cheap if possible, and they're asking us to build this. So we're building it. If we don't build it, someone else will build it. Maybe they'll build it less well. We think so far we're doing the best, hopefully. Um, but I'll say this: what we've seen, um, rarely, if ever, has someone cut their staff after using Forethought. It's very much the case, not just I think in customer support, but maybe especially there because it's viewed as a cost center. I would say that's the wrong image, but that's mostly how people view it, is that you're always understaffed anyway, and people are stretching, and the end result of that is that your customers are waiting in queues for days, most often. And so what just happens is with the staff that you have, you keep hiring, maybe you'll hire less, but you end up resolving the issues faster. You may not need to grow the team as fast as before. There's just a massive backlog that's already there. Over the long run, do I think there will be fewer support jobs per company if a company has started being AI first? Yes, likely. But that's kind of been the story of technology. I think you create new kinds of work. I'm not an expert at this, but that's how I see it going. There's maybe higher level work, and you're dealing with more complicated issues from customers, or you're now teaching the software how to talk to your customers instead of doing it yourself in a repeated way. So yeah, I think that disruption will take a long time, but it probably will happen. Whether we're doing it or not, we're just trying to build the best experience for customers and companies.
Yeah, I think earlier you mentioned about, kind of like a lot of customer support agents, depending on the issues that they resolve, a lot of them could be boring work or like
Totally.
that drains their day, right? So by employing a solutions like Forethought, it actually frees them up to be doing potentially more value added services. All right, we're almost coming up on time, as your phone has reminded us. Let's talk about two final questions. But first, let's envision the future a little bit. What trends do you see in the field of generative AI customer service automation space? I know Forethought is leading some of the charge, like to the extent you could share, like new features that you're hoping to launch, where you see, the industry is going.
Yeah, trends in the field of so there's been a trend in general outside of customer service of bigger and bigger and bigger models. Um, this is controversial, actually. This is just my opinion. It's not currently the trendy way of thinking about things, but um, if you actually have a prompt that's talking to a large language model and you commit that in production, normally you have all these automated tests that run on traditional software. That's kind of missing unless you build it yourself. You build a great evaluation mechanism, and that's the kind of testing that you're doing. Um, if you're doing that, that takes maybe an hour or something to run. Um, but if you have that kind of data, it's probably actually better for you to train a dedicated, fine-tuned, likely smaller, faster, cheaper model that you host yourself, instead of just relying on a large language model to do everything, because whatever your prompt is, that's one specific task. So I think it might take a couple of years, but um, you'll probably see, I think, large language models are great for experimenting. And then when something works, um, it's easy to either have access to the data or to generate it automatically. There will be services probably that will do this and fine tune a smaller, dedicated um, model that you own that is faster. Latency is a huge thing, and cheaper. So that probably will happen. As far as customer service specifically, I think we're the first in this area to make everything be expressed more in natural language. Um, I think that will happen. Probably others will catch up too. And I think it will become more about how do you um, remove the burden from the admin to have to come up with these elaborate policies, because the policy is kind of the king here. If you make a mistake there, then that's what your customers will see. If you can generate it and have more guardrails around it and root it in the historical data that's been really like built up over years based on how agents have done things, agents who were well trained and professionals, I think that's probably where it's headed. I'm biased because that's like what we're doing, but I think now it's kind of generative AI is cool. Look at what we can do that we couldn't do before, but then it's all about guardrails and building this fast and making it correct.
Yeah, I'm really glad now that you share a little bit about what the policy looks like in the pre-generative AI era, right? Without the natural language understanding, like how competent it could be, a decision tree of your 25 layers, right? It's very easy to get wrong, right? So it's great to see that evolution and more efficient model. We're coming up on time, so I'm just going to ask one final question about parting advice. Um, Both, I think, from the personal reflection side, you've been at Forethought for the past 6 7 years. What are some of the sort of your proudest moment or most challenging times that as a founder and CTO? And then what advice would you give to people if they think about building their own generative AI products or building it as part of a company? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I'll start with the end of that. I think if you build a product using generative AI, just think of generative AI as a tool that you can use among many other tools. And really, we actually lost sight of this early on. It wasn't called generative AI at the time, but we wanted to be this AI company, and we thought a lot about what's more advanced AI rather than what is really the problem that we're trying to solve. And it doesn't matter how we solve it. It could be a regular expression, could be whatever. Customer doesn't care. Just speed of um, um, execution and being customer obsessed. Probably those are the two most important things. Doesn't matter what you use under the hood. So I would say don't obsess too much about the how. Um, and then some of my proudest moments, I think there's so many highs and lows. The highs you remember a little more. So we participated in TechCrunch Disrupt many years ago, and we ended up winning that. That was a huge high. Every time we've hired somebody new on the team and seen the team come together and form relationships with each other and come up with new ideas that we hadn't thought of, like every time that happens, that's a very proud moment. You feel like you've built this thing that's taken on a life of its own. Um, Failures, I think, related to my first point, just focus on the customer, not your preconceived ideas of what might be cool or what the customer might want. A lot of user research and try things quickly. If they don't work, don't be attached to no, this was my solution and I think it should be this way. Just pivot fast.
Yeah, I think a lot of the learnings are classic PM 101, right? Don't don't fall in love of a technology, of a solution in search of a problem, but really focus on the problem and figure out. Sometimes it's not the most exciting tech that solves the problem. So really, thank you for sharing that, and thanks again, Sami, for joining us and for the demo and walkthrough of some of the journey. It's really exciting. And so for folks who are joining us again, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, which you can find a link in the event details tab. We'll recap key takeaways from today's conversation with Sami, as well as future conversations with other generative AI companies and leaders. But thank you so much again, Sami, for joining us.
So much.
Bye.